Hello and welcome to the What's Happening show. My name is Jamie.
I'm Michelle.
And welcome to our first podcast. It is absolutely great to be here and it's great to have you guys all listening. Now on the show today, we are going to talk about some music that both Michelle and I have found over the last few weeks, and we're going to discuss the pros and cons of being a supporting act for a popular band, whether this is on tour or at a gig. And we will also touch on the pros and cons of live streaming and what it means to the industry. Now in future podcasts, we will also feature an interview with an artist, but as this is the first podcast, we're going to spend a little bit of time discussing why we're doing this podcast and what you can expect in the future. So Michelle, what can you expect from this podcast in the future?
So we created this podcast because we both love music and we both love supporting sort of unsigned and indie artists, people who are up and coming in the music industry, and giving them more of a platform. So we'll be dropping some super sick songs. We'll be talking about some really awesome artists, and we'll even be talking to artists about their creative process, about what it's like to be in the industry, just about their lives in general sometimes as well. And we'll be getting some really nice tunes off of them as well. It's going to be really great. We're going to be doing this fortnightly, so make sure to keep checking back. And with everything that we're discussing, because we're going to be talking about stuff that's going on in the industry and, current events with music. So if you have opinions or thoughts that you want to share with us, we really want you guys to engage in the conversation. So make sure to talk to us on Twitter, talk to us on our other social medias, and just let us know what you're thinking about what we're talking about, because it's all part of the process. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to support all unsigned music and signed music alike by just spreading the word of music and spreading what music is. So shall we start with our discoveries, Michelle? Is that a good place to start?
Yeah, totally. So just to sort of lead you guys into the artists that I chose, hopefully all of you know that it's Pride Month in June. So I've been listening to a lot of great music by people who are very pro LGBT plus rights or are LGBT plus themselves, because it's a community that I'm a member of, and I am here to help promote other people who are also part of that community or at least allied to that community. So I've been listening to a lot of Pride playlists and stuff like that, and that's where that's where my artists come from. And so the first one that I found was Rick Wilson, and he has an absolute banger of a song called Fight Like Ida B and Marsha P. And for those of you who don't know, Ida B. Wells was an American investigative journalist and an early leader in the civil rights movement. I'm talking, she was born in 1862. When I say early civil rights movement, I mean early. So she is just such an inspiration. And then Marsha P. Johnson is a Black trans woman. She was one of the first people to throw a brick at the Stonewall riots. She is such an inspiration. She is such a hero to the LGBT plus community. And so this song was just so good and so empowering. And just I just love the fact that, he's lifting up these amazing Black activists and promoting them. So I was listening to that song and I was like, this is so dope. I want to check out some more. So I went to his SoundCloud and I realized he's got a new EP out called They Call Me Disco. And I was just listening to it and it's just it's so good. It's got some really sick hip hop and rap and funk vibes to it. And just I honestly I loved it. I was literally hanging up my laundry and just bobbing along, having such a great time. And it's literally if anybody can make me doing my laundry fun, it's got to be good music. So if you're really into funk vibes and hip hop and rap, check him out because he is so good and he's got some great tracks.
So, sounds amazing. I don't have any songs that I do the laundry to. I don't do a lot of laundry. I have to put my hands up that my other half does that. But so one of the acts that I discovered it wasn't this week. I discovered them, I think, 2 weeks ago. But I've been listening to them for the last 2 weeks. Absolutely love them. They've got an amazing name. So they're called Hats Off Gentlemen. It's Adequate. They're a British duo, and they are Malcolm Galloway and Mark Gatland. And I absolutely love these guys. They have such a massive array of music. You know, the music covers progressive, it covers rock, it covers alternative. They've got epic soundscapes that you could use for like a film score, or you can use for like atmospheric builds. And they also have your typical rock numbers. So they're properly diverse. Really, really enjoyed them. They have a new album which came out, I think, a month ago, called Nostalgia for Infinity, which is another amazing name. And it's just all the music on it is excellent, and as I just said, it's so diverse. There's a lot of different things happening, and I think one of the main things that kind of really stood out for me was how amazing the production quality was. You know, the songs are written very, very well, but there's so much room in each song, and there's a lot happening in each song. And I was so surprised to find out it was just two guys playing all this stuff. The dynamics were absolutely amazing. So, you know, if you're into kind of experimental music and soundscapes and rock and a bit of alternative thrown in there, then hats off, Gentlemen is Adequate. Definitely somebody you need to check out. So now it's back over to you, Michelle.
My other artist that I found is called Handsome, and she stylizes herself or her like music genre as tomboy pop. And honestly, like, it's got some like super dope electronic vibes in it. And it's just like, it is pop, but it's like, it's different from like the pop that you normally think of when you think pop. Like, we're not really talking about like full on sort of Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, like typical pop. Like, she's just got a whole different vibe going on, and I absolutely love it. She's based in Sydney, Australia. And if you want to check out some of her songs, I definitely recommend Delete You and The Walker. They're the most recent ones that she's got out, but they're so good. But I'm pretty sure she's got new music coming out soon. So like, definitely keep an eye on her, because like, it's just so cool what she's doing, and it's just so different, and I love it.
Can you do the laundry to her music? Does she get the accolade?
More my dishes vibe.
Fair enough. Well, I wouldn't wash my dishes to the next act I've got, but I would recommend you listen to them in a club, or you listen to them when you just want to have a good time and have a bit of a party. And especially if you're into electronic music, then these guys are definitely the people to check out. They are from Dundee, and it's another duo, and these guys are called the Better Waves. Now, some people have said that they're shaping electronic Scottish music. I don't know how much that is true, because I don't know the electronic scene massively. But I would say these guys have introduced me to a lot of elements in that scene. I've discovered things like synthwave, which I didn't really know a lot about. But that's kind of more what I've got out of them. What I think people will get out of them is just something that's upbeat, something that gets you moving, and something you just really experience and enjoy. They've been producing singles every month for the last 3 months, and you know, each single they've done is completely different. They started with a song called Hideaway, which was very synthy and very, very heavy on the beats. Then they came back with last month with a song, You Don't Need To. And then the latest song that they produced in June is a very kind of new disco song called I Had You Wrong. And I got the chance to review that and talk to the guys about it, and it was just absolutely excellent. So if you like electronic music, you like electronic pop, you like something that kind of experiments with synth sounds and adds lots of samples on top, with some really nice vocals, then Better Waves are the band that you need to try.
So for my final artist, I've got Sir Baby Girl. This is a US-based artist, and Sir Baby Girl's music is just so cool. It's a mix of pop, a little bit punk, and it's got some cool electronic, like synthy vibes to it, which for those of you who have been listening to my playlists, I love a good bit of synth. So it's just very dope. And the music is just so different. Like, it's got such a cool vibe to it. It's got such a different sound. I really enjoyed listening to Sir Baby Girl's album, Crush on Me, which was released in February 2019. And it's an album that's been in the works since 2016. So a lot of hard work and dedication has gone into it, and the results are bomb. Some of my favorites off of it are Haunted House, Flirting with Her, and Cheerleader. So if you're looking for a place to start with Sir Baby Girl's catalog, I recommend those three. But honestly, just listen to the entire album because it's just so good.
Well, I will definitely add that to things that I need to listen to, because now I have a list of something I can wash the dishes to, I can do the laundry to, and then I can now dance to. So that's awesome. But my third act that I wanted to feature here is also from America, and this is a singer-songwriter. So I've gone away from the duos now, but this is a singer-songwriter, Frankie Love, and she has been involved in music all her life. Like a lot of musicians, she's classically trained on the piano, but what stands out for me is her vocals. Her vocals are just beautiful. There's a hauntingly beautiful character to her vocals, and as soon as I heard the first note, I was absolutely hooked. I thought she was absolutely amazing. She's got a very kind of a pop vibe to her, so if you're into kind of pop with a huge piano backing to it, then this is definitely someone you need to check out. She has a new album coming this year. I think you could start to pre-order it last week. But she did produce a single from that album in April called Walking Wounded, and as I just said, it was absolutely beautiful. I really enjoyed it, and if you like pop, you love beautiful vocals and classically trained piano all mixed into one, it's there for you. So Frankie Love is someone you need to check out. So they are the 6 artists that me and Michelle have discovered recently, which we think you guys should check out. So make sure you check them up on Spotify and all the usual music links to hear some amazing music and maybe listen to some of the stuff that we have enjoyed, and hopefully you'll enjoy it too. Anyway, guys, it's now time for me to introduce our first song of the show, and this is from a band called Paul, and this is called Shimalay.
I can't believe that this has happened again. No, but you're a dirty, no good, low life, Shimalay. I was isolated, you never hesitated, you just detonated in my way. You say you want me back, well no, not
So now we're going to move on to the part where we talk about some topics that Jamie and I have found relating to the music industry, just things that we've seen that are either trending or have come up in conversations. And so to kick us off, I'll talk about an article that I found from The Economist from the 1st of May. So it's a little bit backdated, but I think the topic's really, really interesting. It's an article that discusses basically the benefits or the lack of benefits potentially in being a warm-up act for like a big artist. And so basically what this article talks about is there was an academic study that was published in a journal called Organization Science. And it was basically concluding that new bands that frequently appear with high status artists make less money and were apparently more likely to dissolve, which I just thought was really interesting because I was just sort of, you think about it and it's like, you think like going on tour with a huge artist, like you get to play to like arenas, you get to play to like all these amazing fans and that sort of thing. Like you think it would be a really good opportunity for your big break. And like, no doubt, definitely for some artists, it totally is. And I think that's kind of what I was thinking about. But then it was like, I started thinking about like my own experience in when I go to gigs. And like, I was just thinking like, whenever I go to gigs, like the reality is like most of the time for a warm-up act, like I'll listen to some of their stuff, but it's also like, I've arrived late to a concert and not been too fussed because I've been like, oh, well, it's okay because, like Fall Out Boy's not on until 10 probably because there's warm-up acts, so it's okay if we're a little late. Or, like I'm more likely to pop out to get, my like 6 pints to carry back to the stands like in the middle of a warm-up act because, then I'm not going to miss the main show. And it's just like, it just sort of made me think that it's like, maybe there is that sort of like underappreciation for warm-up acts and like, whether, like on the one hand, yeah, you get to play to like a huge arena or the experience of going on tour or, the article talks about the fact that, there's other benefits in the sense that like you do obviously get some fans off, especially if the act that you're warming up for is like a similar genre to you. Or like, another point that they raised that I thought was really interesting is like, especially if you're going on a tour to like, say to Europe, like you could get your flights paid for like a warm-up act show in Europe, and then you can then carry on with your own headline in like smaller venues potentially if you wanted to. And so it was raising like those kind of points. But yeah, and it just sort of made me realize like that, the idea of like warming up for like this massive like gig is maybe not all it's cut out to be in some senses. Like while there's benefits, there's also, there's loads of people like me who are concert goers who are like a little bit nonchalant about it, which is not always great. But yeah, I just thought it was really interesting. And it just really made me think about like my own experiences as a concert goer. And, you sort of wonder sometimes like what happens to those warm-up acts. Like some of them make it, some of them don't. And yeah, I just thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think we're all guilty of that fact of going to a show, but maybe not going and supporting the warm-up acts and supporting the people who are actually supporting the person you maybe have bought your tickets for. But kind of embedded within all that, I wonder if the people maybe to blame that would be the venues or the people who are actually booking the shows, because there's a lot of times where, say your headline comes on at 8 or 9 at night, but they'll open the venue at 5. But people may be working, and people might not necessarily be able to get there for 5. So then they put on an act who then plays to an empty stadium, which is somewhat unfair. Some people may see it as a rite of passage that you have to do these gigs to kind of move up the card. But I do wonder if they put shows later, if we kind of we were a little bit more lax on music regulations, that music can't play past 11 o'clock, for example, in places like Glasgow, then these acts might get a bit more of a showing, and therefore this would be more beneficial for them. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know. I didn't know there were places where it was like you couldn't do music past 11. Like, I had no idea that was even a thing.
Yeah, I was just saying. I mean, Glasgow is a pretty good example of that, and I think there's places in Liverpool and Manchester where live music that's not of a DJ variety or of, say, something that a disco would play is told to stop at that point. It's something that I think is in place because there's residents that live around these venues, but that's a whole other matter to talk about, whether residents should be able to regulate when music could get played or not. But yeah, I often feel like I just said that can implement that these guys who are supporting don't get as much coverage as maybe the poster would suggest.
No, totally. And I think your point as well that you were saying about a lot of the show maybe starts at 6 or whatever, and it's people get off work at 5:30, 6 o'clock. They want to go, nobody wants to show up to a gig in their suit and tie, right from work, feeling like they've just come from the office to a gig. It's one of those places that you go to let loose. So yeah, I mean, for a lot of bands, this is kind of their big break. They're getting to play in front of this big audience. And on the one hand, in some ways it totally is, because I was thinking about it, going back through all my concert experience, there are a handful of opening acts that really stick in my mind. Some of them are because I already kind of knew them, and so was kind of into their music or was aware of them, and so was willing to kind of sit through the show or whatever. But then there's so many others, because I've been to a lot of gigs, and there are so many others where it's just I couldn't even tell you their names. And it's just sort of and I think that's the thing, is because it's to be honest, when you show up to a gig, if you're going with friends, you're chatting, you're maybe catching up a little bit at first, and you're showing up and you're kind of hey, I want to get my drinks, and maybe you want to get food, you want to pick up some merch before it all gets sold out, and so it's you're maybe just not you're not actually necessarily listening full on. But I mean, in a way, it's a bit of a shame, because there are a few where it's I remember the music, and I remember sitting there and thinking wow, these guys are really good. But I don't know whether maybe this is just marketing or something like that, but I just don't remember the name. And that's also a bit of a shame, because it's I feel if you're a supporting act, it's one thing to sort of play in front of everybody, but it's also about making sure that you've got that name recognition. And I sometimes feel there's a bit of a disconnect, because I don't know if other people have found this, but sometimes what I'll do before a concert, if I hear that a band that I know is supporting a band, I'll sort of maybe want to see them both together. But it's really hard sometimes to find the list of support acts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean, especially on tours and on the bigger shows where, they vary. They sometimes take support acts from the local area rather than touring with someone, which that's another example of where the support act, I feel, gets a bit of a raw deal, because, they're trying to pack a lot into a certain amount of time. And, I think if they went, right, doors open at 7 and the main act's on at 8, they'd be worried that they wouldn't get a sellout crowd by the time that 8 came around, and that's why they kind of filter all these acts in. But at the same time, I think an argument against this is if the acts have the experience from playing with these bigger bands, and also from the experience of working with the touring engineers from these bigger bands, and also maybe meeting some of their backstored staff, then that actually could lead to things in the future. I think if you have a band that's playing on, say, a secondary stage or something in a festival, I think that's very different, because there are talent scouts everywhere. But if they are going to support someone and they're just turning up at the show, and maybe they haven't ever done a gig like that before, I think that experience is invaluable. But as you say, the next stepping stone from that, is that necessarily going to come from that gig, or does it come from elsewhere? But then you could also argue if they don't do that gig, then that next stepping stone won't present itself.
No, totally. Like, I definitely think it's something like you shouldn't maybe like necessarily pass up opportunities to be supporting, like a supporting artist. Because yeah, like I think there are loads of other sort of benefits apart from just exposure. Like I was saying, like one of the examples, like the article gives is, you know, like they might get flights paid to another country where they can book their own headline shows. You know what I mean? Like, and another one, which I think is just really funny, is the quote is, they might take an arena support tour because they've heard the headliners have really good backstage catering and they're at a loose end, which I just love. Yeah, of course, why not go if the food's good? You know what I mean? Like, so there's definitely like our benefits, and I think it just depends on like the artist and kind of like what you're looking for. But it just like, I think the thing is yeah, it just made me really reflect on my own experience as a concert goer, and just like my, like I said, like how there's some support acts that I remember, but considering the amount of shows that I've been to, there's loads that I don't. And it's not because they weren't good, and it's not because they weren't talented. And it's also a bit of a shame because, like you said, like a lot of them are local artists to where I was living at the time. And it's always nice to kind of support local music, and then to just sort of go away from a gig and not even remember their name. Like, I don't know, maybe it was just bringing up a lot of guilt.
No, I think everybody's guilty of it, as we said at the start. And I think also like a real shining gem in all this is you never know who you're necessarily watching. I had a friend who I can't remember what the university he went to, but it's the same university that Rizzle Kicks came from, and they played a lot at the university, and he never went to see them. And then a year and a half later, they were one of the biggest acts in the UK, and you know, he missed a chance to see something that was emerging, that was clearly going to be popular and clearly was excellent in its own right. So I think all we're really saying in all this is to, you know, consider these support acts, consider where they come from, and you know, if you can give these guys time to support their music and listen to them, I'm sure, and if I was on stage, I definitely would. They would appreciate everybody who listened to their music, and you know, help them along, and just think about the people other than the headline act that you maybe bought the ticket for, because I don't think the money gets evenly distributed. I don't think that's wrong if I make a comment like that. But yeah, just maybe think about the acts. I mean, it'd be good to hear what our listeners think about if they were offered a tour. You know, what considerations they have, and is it something that they can support? Because as you said with the catering, I mean, that obviously is a nice thing to do. If, you know, if someone feeds you well, then why wouldn't you go? But a lot of these support acts probably rely on that, because without that, they'd be skint. So if they had to pay for food everywhere they went, you know, they wouldn't be able to sustain it. And I think being a full-time musician until you are semi-popular and semi-famous, I think is probably pretty hard. But, you know, maybe some of the listeners who are musicians can enlighten us on that thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd also love to hear from like, you know, all of you who've been to gigs, like what have been like your thoughts on, you know, the supporting acts, and like, was there anybody that was super memorable and you just like fell in love with from a support gig? Like, I'd just be really interested to know. Yeah,
that'd be super interesting to know if there's anybody that you met at a gig and like, right, these are I love these guys, and you actually were so glad you went to the gig because you saw them rather than the headline. And I think we're also quite interested to know, just like my friend, if there was anyone who supported an act that you went to see but you didn't really see them much of, and then they became famous. That'd be quite an interesting statistic to have as well. So while you guys are thinking of the pros and cons of being a supporting act for either a tour or a gig-by-gig scenario, we're going to play another song for you, and this one comes from Esha K, and this is called Stand By You. We absolutely love this song, so if you like it, go and check it out on all the social medias. We're sure you will.
Sometimes bad things happen, I never know what to say. Doesn't matter if it's close by or a million miles away. Tell me, can you tell me why the skies are gray? Tell me why I feel this way. I never even knew their names. Go to sleep tonight. We will keep our eyes open for you. With our hearts we will mend your broken pieces. Hand in hand we will stand by you. Whoa, stand by you. I can't imagine the fear that's running through your veins. Oh, you can never close your eyes. It brings back the memories. You hear all the screams. Tell me, please, tell me it'll be okay. That everyone will live today. I just want some peace in me. Go to sleep tonight. We will keep our eyes open for you. With our hearts we will mend your broken pieces. Hand in hand we will stand. Doesn't matter if you're black or white, we'll stand by you. Doesn't matter if you're wrong or right, we'll stand by you. Doesn't matter if you're breaking down, it doesn't matter if you're not around, we will stand by you. Doesn't matter if we're out of time, doesn't matter if they draw the line, we will stand by you. Go to sleep tonight. We will keep our eyes open for you. With our hearts we will mend your broken pieces. Hand in hand we will stand. With our hearts we will mend your broken pieces. Hand in hand we will stand by you. Whoa, we'll stand by you.
So that last song was Stand By You by Esha K, and before that, Michelle was talking about the pros and cons of supporting acts in both a tour and a gig scenario. So with the absence of live gigs and the event industry coming to somewhat of a standstill, there has been many live streams as well as the reshowing of gig footage from popular artists and unsigned artists alike. So today, Michelle, I thought it'd be interesting to discuss the pros and cons of streaming and what we can expect in the future from this service. So I think it's important to address the obvious point that most live streaming happens on a social media platform, and I think this is a perfect place for live streaming to happen. There are hundreds of thousands of people on social media, and basically you have an unlimited amount of old fans and new fans that you can touch base with across the world, which is obviously a massive pro to when you're doing live streaming. But at the same time, this service is often free and this service is open to everyone. So you have the potential that every musician does this at the same time, which I think leads to two issues. Because the first thing is your fans and other musicians who are watching might not know where to look because there's a lot going on. And you also have that element of a very saturated market with lots of musicians live streaming at the same time, all trying to compete with each other for your time. So I think that gives you two problems. Obviously, the first one is that oversaturation. Then the second one is people knowing where to look. And I think you need to think about when you're live streaming who you are aiming for when you are doing your live stream. Because if you do something on Facebook Live, for example, you're mostly streaming to people you know or your friends. Whereas if you do it on something like YouTube or Vimeo or a big media platform like those sites, then you're often trying to reach people at a wider spectrum that maybe you don't know. And I think some people like to integrate and communicate with their audience while they're doing live streaming, and Facebook Live is brilliant for that, whereas YouTube comments, in my experience, it is not so great. So I think when you are doing live streaming, you have to really think about who your audience is and what you're trying to achieve, and I think that can be a bit of a con, because when you look at maybe doing, say, something on a radio, or you're doing a live gig, you're really only doing one thing. Whereas a live stream, I think you really need to think about what it is you're trying to achieve, because it can be many things and it can morph into doing many things. And I think that kind of leads to my next point, because as the live stream can be anything, it is all very equipment heavy dependent. Now, I know that you can stream on multiple social medias at the same time, but some people might not have access to that encoding equipment. And they might not also have access to really good microphones and really good graphics design software, really good cameras, where some of the bigger acts might. And that then leads to differences in quality, which I think can be a negative for, say, an unsigned artist who doesn't have that equipment and can't produce something to the same level that someone like maybe Goldfinger can. I mean, they produce some absolutely excellent live streams over the lockdown period, and that's not negating anybody who hasn't produced that level. But if in social media you often have people just scrolling, and unless something catches their eye, they don't often stop. And I think that can be a real con of live streaming. Unless you are able to have something that stands out, you might be missed by quite a lot of people. Whereas if you look at a gig or you look at a radio, often that equipment that you're using is there. So if you go to a venue, for example, there is a pretty good PA system often in place, and there's a sound engineer who makes you sound good. And when someone comes in, they listen, they go, oh, that sounds really good, and then you have your main act, and they also sound really good, but you're almost on a level playing field when it comes to technology. But in the live stream, I just don't feel like that's there, and the people who have this equipment have the potential to make something look fancier, look more graphically pleasing, and therefore almost steal the audience away from someone who maybe doesn't have that. So I think that is a con. But I do think live streaming is a machine that might work for some people and might not work for others. And I do think a huge pro I do think live streaming has brought is, I think it's brought a new community to the music industry where people can develop themselves and get feedback instantly. So an example of this is there's an Edinburgh musician called Martina Cannonball who's made a Facebook group called Live from the Bedroom, and the whole point of this group was to allow musicians who maybe weren't confident enough to go out and do a gig or do an open mic night to play for other musicians and then receive feedback. So it'd be something like, well, I've got a couple of songs, I want to go and play them, but I don't feel too good about playing in front of an audience. I can play in front of my computer, which is obviously a lot less daunting, and then from there I can then get feedback from musicians and then know what to improve on and then develop as a musician. So when I go out into that live gig scenario, I feel a bit more confident. And for any musician who maybe is confident about doing gigs, they can go out and try new material and see what their fans think, and then work on something and develop a kind of maybe a new style that they're after by getting instant feedback. And then the other thing about live streaming, in a lot of scenarios, you often get a video that comes with it, so there's a bit of extra promotion that you can put out there for free, really. And I think that is a huge pro of live streaming. So I've got a few pros and cons there. I don't know if you have any thoughts on what I've discussed there, Michelle?
Yeah, so I think you've raised some really good points, but I would say I think I'm leaning more towards it being a positive thing, maybe just because some of the points that you've made about the oversaturation and people feeling like there's too much choice and not really knowing where to go. I feel like that's not a new problem for the music industry. And the same with some people having more access to better equipment. Again, I feel like that's not a new problem for the music industry. I feel like these are just the same old kind of problems that artists face all the time that are just kind of repackaged for the online experience. Because I mean, if you think about it, like there are hundreds and thousands of artists all over the world competing for people's attention, not just on streaming platforms, but, you know, for people to listen to their music on like, you know, SoundCloud, or to listen to on Spotify, or like before we had SoundCloud and Spotify, you know, to buy their albums, you know, or their EPs and stuff like that. And so, I mean, in a way, I guess, like, it's not changed too much. It's just made it more accessible for people who, you know, back in the day wouldn't be able to make their own EP. And so this is the same thing. It's like you talk about, like, some people will have better quality streaming, but on the flip side, you could also run a live stream off of your phone. And it's not necessarily like bad quality. Like the video and sound quality you can get off phones now is wild. So it's like, well, yeah, you're going to get these big name bands who can do, like, you know, their proper studio recording, or, you know, use their proper expensive microphones and stuff like that. It does still, I think, make it more accessible, because while, and it, like, this kind of reaches into one of the points that I think you sort of made as a positive, in the fact that there's so much reach. Like, it's insane how much reach you get with live streaming, because if you think about it, like, even when you're, you know, playing like a gig in a town or whatever, like you're only going to get people who are roughly from that local area, from nearby. And even then, like, people who will travel quite a distance to see you, like, they're going to already know who you are and be a huge fan, because it's not convenient necessarily, especially now, but it's not convenient to, you know, necessarily travel to another city, stay overnight or whatever to watch a band. So, I mean, normally you'd just be pulling people off the street who've seen your flyers or who are in the pub that you're playing in. Whereas, like, with live streaming, when you're doing a live performance, you're giving that live music to people. Yeah, like, I mean, you could be playing in, like, you know, like Aberdeen or whatever, and then somebody in like Sydney, Australia is listening to your music and is sitting there being like, damn, this is good. Like, you know, whereas like if you were just playing at the local pub, or if you were playing at a local venue, or even a venue like 2 towns over, that person in Sydney wouldn't necessarily see your music. So I think it just sort of opens the live music audience a bit more. Because I always think, like, even live music when it's being streamed is always different from like a polished EP recording. Like, there's always something a bit different about watching a musician play live, even if it has to be over a stream because of circumstances. So I think those huge positives are like far outweigh sort of negatives about oversaturation and that sort of thing. Because I think at the end of the day, you have to deal with those anyways in the music industry. Because, like, I mean, you've got to figure out how you as a musician can make your cut through, and be sort of above the noise, like live streaming or no live streaming. And I think actually, like, with the sort of advent of being able to do, like, not even just like live streaming, but sort of like online videos of you performing your music has really changed the game for a lot of musicians. Again, like I said, because like you can do it from your bedroom. You don't have to, you know, go to like record execs or send them emails all the time, sort of being like, here's my music. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Like, I mean, what is it? Didn't like Justin Bieber like get really, really famous just off of YouTube videos initially? Like, you know what I mean? Like it has changed and he's uber famous now. It's completely changed the game for artists, being able to do these sort of online videos. And I think live streaming will sort of take it that next step up for some people.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think, yeah, I was saying that everybody wasn't really on a playing field when it came to technology, but given what you said, I actually do agree with you. I think everybody is on maybe even more of a playing field than they were, because, you know, just as you said, that there's someone who's listening in Sydney can hear somebody in Aberdeen, whereas they wouldn't be able to do that before. There's a lot more exposure, a lot more chance to kind of put yourself out there. And I think what a lot of fans like when they follow musicians, they like to follow their lives and like to see what they do. So the fact that live streaming can be kind of coupled with, you know, say Instagram followers and people who follow your Twitter and enjoy what you tweet, you know, actually I think in that context, as a very social medium export, I think it actually does really, really well. And I think you're right. I think adding more exposure and, you know, giving them maybe a bit more of a level playing field. I think that's absolutely right. And I think kind of coupled with that is the future of live streaming, I think, is very bright. I think that it's only going to get better. As you said, like, you know, the quality we can get on phones now, the quality that people can produce by just looking at their looking through their computer, and you know what they can get on cameras is so much better than you could 10 years ago. So, you know, as that technology gets better, as we're able to stream, you know, ultra HD in easier methods than we can at the moment, then things are gonna get better, things are gonna sound better, and I think your atmosphere of live streams will improve. I think live streaming will probably become a huge thing to do with gigs. I know they've done it in the past, and it was often a camera at the back, and it kind of helps get some of the Facebook audience involved as well. But I think you'll get things like, you know, maybe this is a bit far in the future, but I think like things like hologram and virtual reality will probably come into its own. So yeah, I think after everything we've discussed with the fact that it puts people more on that level playing field and, you know, gives them more exposure as live streaming improves, I think we will see better live streams from unsigned artists, better live streams from people who maybe don't have the technology that they have now, because I think that technology has become readily available as technology advances. And I think coupled with that, just because you know how advertising works, like Facebook makes all its money off advertising, you know, you got Google ads, it's popping up everywhere. You know, as live streaming becomes more and more of a thing, then advertisers are going to become more and more interested in it. So hopefully that might give kind of a bit more of a revenue stream to artists who are maybe relying on live streaming a bit more than a gig. But I think you touched on a very, very good point there, and I maybe made the mistake of comparing it at the start of when I was talking about this, but I think live streaming is probably a very, very different beast. I think it's a very, very different service that artists can offer than maybe a gig or a radio show. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, like, the whole vibe of, like, a gig is so different from doing a live stream, because, I mean, there's something about being in, like, you know, a room, like, filled with, like, people listening to the same song as you, like, just jamming out, enjoying the music, like, everybody's on, like, the same vibe. You know, like, that's just you can't easily replicate that in an online thing, because, I mean, like, even if I had like 10 of my friends like sitting in the same room as me, like, and we were watching the live stream, like, it's not the same. So I think it's like, I don't think you can ever replicate that feeling, but I think like live streaming is maybe like as close as you can get. The one thing that I wanted to touch on a little bit though as well is you mentioned like about like the VR and like hologram gigs and stuff like that, and it made me think, like, I remember seeing something on BBC actually about like the music industry during COVID and stuff like that, and I think they mentioned that on like Fortnite they had actually done these like VR, well, not VR obviously, but they had actually done these sort of like these gigs like in the gaming platform.
Okay.
Apparently they had like artists like come onto Fortnite and do songs and like their little characters or whatever, do like the music and stuff like that. And so then all the people, like all the Fortnite users or whatever, were just like on the gaming platform, like rocking out to it apparently, which I just thought was like really like wild because like I don't know, I've never used Fortnite, so I have no idea what it's like, but just the fact that you can have like a gig on a gaming platform, like basically like live music, I just thought was like a wild concept. But like, this is the thing, is like, this is what's happening. But even then, like I said, like I don't use Fortnite, I wasn't at this thing, but like to me again, it's not the same as going to an actual gig, but it's maybe a bit closer. And I think that's the same with like live streaming. Like, it's like you're still seeing somebody like do their art live, but it's just not the same as being in that atmosphere.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think, as you say, I don't think anything can replicate being actually at a gig and feeling the energy and feeling the vibe that you get from other people. But I would be interested. I mean, that thing about Fortnite is really interesting. I think I've actually seen something similar to that someone did on Minecraft. I think they did like they built it all, and then they played the the video of the band playing behind on the stage, and everything was static, but that sort of idea of doing it through a game, I mean, that's quite interesting. Let's see if I can find anything that has examples of that going on. But I would be interested, I think, to see how live streaming changes once we can get back into going to gigs. I think everybody who likes music would always prefer to go to a gig because you have that much more intimate atmosphere, you have the vibe, you have the energy that you get from other people being there as well. But it'd be interesting to see how that live streaming develops, and if it stays at a constant that it has been at. I think it'll dip a little bit because all these musicians who have been live streaming will be then playing in their gigs. But yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see how it develops going forward.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. Because I think it's one of those things that's just made music more accessible. But it'll be interesting, like you said, to see what happens. Because I'm also like, when you're talking about like people who like, I would much rather be in a gig than watch a live stream. But I'm thinking about, I've been doing a lot of politics in the last week, so this is very like at the forefront of my mind. But I was thinking about like the people who necessarily might not feel safe in gigs for whatever reason, or like, the venues might not be accessible for people in like wheelchairs, or like even on crutches sometimes is a little tricky, you know what I mean? And it's like, has live streaming made music more accessible to these people as well? Because normally you'd have to go out to see live music. You'd have to be in these venues that, you might not feel comfortable in, you might not be able to physically be in. And so now all of a sudden with live streaming, you can watch people do their live music in a place that is comfortable for you. And so in that way, I think it's really good as well.
Yeah, that's an absolutely excellent point. Absolutely excellent. I think, that has got to be one of the biggest pros of live streaming. The fact that you can be comfortable and you can be relaxed and you can have everything that you need around you while enjoying live music without having to worry about all the travel or worrying about the people around you. I mean, I know some people are skeptical about going to gigs and stay kind of some of the Eastern European countries because the people who maybe go to a metal concert are I wouldn't say tougher, but they're a lot more rough at gigs. And people are like, well, I want to see that artist, but I don't want to be involved in that. I know people who go to metal shows who don't want to be involved in mosh pits, but then that means they end up standing at the back of the stadium, and they're like, well, I don't want to stand at the back. So yeah, I think that's a very, very good point to raise, and I think that is an absolute pro for live streaming. So I think we're going to wrap that topic up there, guys, but please get in touch and let us know what you think the pros and cons of live streaming are, whether you're a live streamer yourself or somebody who just enjoys experiencing live streaming. Also, let us know what you think the pros and cons are of supporting a band on a tour or in a gig-by-gig scenario. We would love to hear your thoughts on that, and also your thoughts on the show that we have put together. So normally, guys, we would have an artist next that we interview and talk a little bit about their music and where they come from. But as this is the first show, we do not have that. So instead, we have 2 songs for you guys to listen to. The first one comes from Clare, Estelle, and her song Electric Dawn. And then the second one is from the amazing Raye, Zaragoza with Fight Like a Girl. We hope you enjoy these.
It thrills me and fills me with fear. like a girl.
Thanks so much for listening today. And remember, if you've got any thoughts on anything that you heard in the show, let us know on our social media. You'll find all those links in the bio. Remember to give us a little follow and a like. As well, in our show notes, you'll find all the links to the artists that you heard us talk about and heard the songs from today. Thanks so much to all of those guys as well, because the music was amazing. And we're so excited that we got to share that with everybody. And we'll see you all back for the next show.